Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Talk of the Towns. We are on the road. We're in Ithaca, New York, gorgeous Ithaca, New York, and we're at our Highway School, and we have a great guest with us here today. His name is David Orr. He's the director of Cornell Local Roads. We'll get to David in just a moment. I want to again thank you for taking time to visit with us on this podcast. My name is Koetzle, the executive director of NYAOT, and as always, if you like what you're seeing here, please make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. You do those things, you are golden. We'll make sure we get this podcast out to as many people as possible as we talk about all things town. And today we're going to talk about something really important to towns, to communities, to the entire state of New York, local roads, and how important they are in this state. So please join me in welcoming David Orr to us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I love the fact that we are here in gorgeous Ithaca. We got a nice field behind us. You have a gentleman mowing the lawn. We'll see how that impacts the podcast. But beautiful Ithaca in the background, and what a beautiful day you've had for your highway school.
It's been a couple of great days with all the rain we've been having.
I know.
So I'm hopeful that it will stay good and not get too smoggy with the smoke from Canada.
Well, that's right. I was seeing that. So, David, let's start with, let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of who you are, which interests you have, and what you're doing.
Okay. So I am David Orr. I've been with the Cornell Local Roads program for over 29 years, my 30th year. Before that, I was with Yates County. I was the deputy superintendent, and I also was the engineer. I actually have a degree from Cornell University in civil engineering that I got back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And I worked there for 8 years. Got to do everything from picking up dead deer to dealing with the legislature, I jokingly say. And then I ask people which is worse, and the answer is it depends on the weather, if you want the honest truth. But I got hired by Local Roads program to act as their technical assistance engineer, to provide training, answer questions from highway communities around the state. And while I was there, I got a degree in local roads. Actually, I have a PhD in local roads.
Wow.
And was able to become the director when our previous director retired. It's been 11 years now that I've been the director of the program. So,
and of course, we've been doing the school for 78 years, so congratulations on that. Not you, but
it's
certainly.
the 78th school, actually. Yeah. We have taken some years off. Obviously, we took a year off during COVID. We took off a few years during World War II. The roots of the school go back actually to 1905 when Cornell University hosted some Good Roads Weeks programs. And then there were some follow-up conferences in the teens and the 20s by different parts of the university. About the mid-30s, the Association of Towns actually started doing training schools for clerks and others and decided to add a school for highway officials. Mm-hmm. So that's why the official name is the Town and County Officers Training School, and it includes highway officials from counties, towns, and we want village folks here, state folks, anybody who has a road or street. Yeah. We do a school aimed at them to help them and create the networks that make the job easier and make the roads better for all the communities in New York State.
Well, it's a great turnout. We're proud at NYAOT to be a partner in this with you. Been a partner for a long, long time, as you just talked about. And I think each year it seems like it might be growing, and you probably have some plans for future growth.
I'd love to have it grow. We've actually been in this facility here. This is our third year in this particular facility here on the Ithaca College campus. We actually have Cornell behind us. And we have room to expand here. We'd really like to see every town, every county, every village, every city send 1-2 people to share, because they can learn from the program, but they can also learn from each other.
Correct.
And finally, they create that network that later on, when that crisis occurs, when there's an issue, they can talk and communicate.
We see that with our members, that nothing's more important than the education that you get at these conferences, and also the networking and being able to learn from each other and build these relationships over the entire state. So that's great. David, can you tell us a little bit about what Cornell Local Roads does, what maybe some of your priorities are and some of the projects you have planned?
Well, let's do a little history and maybe a little bit of a reminder. All trips start and end on a local road. If you think about it, everybody lives on a local road. And so you need to get from point A to point B, going to school, going to work, come to a conference like the Highway School. You're going to be on a local road. And so the idea behind the local roads is an extension of Cornell University. We are actually an extension program to provide training and education and answer the questions from the 933 towns, the 62 cities, the 57 counties, and the 583 villages that exist across New York State. Over half of the mileage are town roads, centerline mileage. In fact, the state actually is about 13% of the centerline miles. Now, most of the traffic is on state roads.
Sure.
But everybody starts and stops on a local road of one type or another. So how do we get that information to them? If you think about history, roads actually started in the U.S. Department of Agriculture. You may have heard the phrase, get the farmer out of the mud. It was actually in the first federal bill. But if you really go back, there was a thing called the Gospel of Good Roads. It was written to talk about the fact that we needed better roads, because roads in the United States in the late 1800s, well, they weren't very good.
Yeah.
And so the idea was, how do we make them better? And one of the things we knew that helped make them better was to help make sure people knew what made good roads, how to build them, how to maintain them, what was the organizational structure. And this was done through something called the Office of Road Inquiry at the federal level. But more importantly, it was a movement called the Good Roads Movement that created the conferences we've held and eventually led to an extension program at Cornell in 1951. After the highway school had been formed. The highway school came first, and we were formed in 1951. But we've had strong linkages with the association since the first highway school in 1938.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we got a lot going on at Cornell Local Roads.
Well, that's just where we came from. Where we're going, we'd really like to expand some of the things that we do. We already do this school every single year. We do a bridge conference in partnership with the County Highway Superintendents and the State Department of Transportation. We do workshops, we do webinars, we have a very extensive website. We do a series of publications called Community Corners, answering common questions that the public has about roads, or maybe board members have, or supervisors have. And if there's something we're missing, we will add to that. So that's what we do now. I mean, we do about 60 workshops a year. We do 25 or so webinars a year. Do these 2 workshops, and then would answer anywhere from 300 to 500 questions that people have of a technical nature on everything from what's the right of way on my road to what do I need to do for signage to make this road safe.
Right. So we've established we work together very well together over the many, many years, but there are a couple issues in particular that we share deep concerns on. And one I'll bring up immediately is the workforce development. We're seeing that it's difficult for towns, municipalities, but obviously being NYAOT, we are focused on towns anyway, having a hard time recruiting and keeping members in highway departments in particular. I mean, every position across the town, but let's talk about highway in particular. You and I have been working, our organization have been working on some ideas around that. What can you talk about on that?
Well, in terms of workforce development, I'm going to take a little quick detour and then come back to the workforce development. One of the things that we do to help make our program successful is we actually are what is known as the Local Technical Assistance Program. That's a federal designation that actually used the Cornell Local Roads Program as its model. And so you'll hear the term LTAP and stuff that we put out, or NYS LTAP, because we're the New York State LTAP Center. The LTAP program has focus areas where we focus on certain things. Infrastructure is obviously a major focus. Highway safety is a major focus. And then workforce development is a major focus. And that includes everything from finding and recruiting employees to training current employees and keeping them and retaining them. So it's a major focus of LTAP, both here in New York State and actually nationally. In fact, if I wasn't here at the highway school, I would be at the International Summit on Workforce Development in the transportation sector out in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, wow.
So I decided I'd better stay here.
It's hard sometimes.
It is hard.
There's a determination.
But we know that's an issue because we've asked, and we do surveys annually, and we've done surveys on workforce development. And those problems exist ranging from salary issues, being able to get commercial driver's licenses has been a big issue lately, getting people trained with the technology that's changing with equipments and with building roads. So there's a huge workforce development issue that's not going to get any easier as we hit retirements.
And there's an odd thing that we've kind of picked up in our work and our research on this with our members is that, you know, folks, younger folks, particularly coming out of school now, don't seem to really be aware of the opportunities that exist within towns. And I don't know what that is because I'm old enough to remember the days where people were clamoring to get into towns. There's some legislative stuff that we need to work on. Tier 6 hasn't helped. Obviously, it's kind of reduced some of our competitiveness. Civil service has made it a little clunky and difficult for municipalities to hire. So there's other areas we need to work on, and I think bring more attention to the fact that there are some good opportunities in towns.
Well, we're firm believers that we need to get people opportunities to try things out.
Yeah.
Whether that's intern programs, whether that's ways to reduce college debt if they've got college debt, combined recruiting. It's actually an idea that Michigan does, which I'd love to see here in New York, rather than having every little municipality do its own advertising for positions, do a combined thing.
Right.
We actually are working with the rural resources folks to maybe get a state law on that.
Yeah.
That would actually then have combined civil service postings. So if you're in Schenectady County, you don't have to go over to Albany County to see what positions are available.
Right.
And you may find a job you like, and then you may find, maybe I don't get paid as much.
Right.
But if we've got competitive benefits and I have a job that I can actually see what I've done at the end of the day, that may be a job I want.
Yeah.
That's actually what happened to me.
Yeah.
I wound up working in Yates County for 8 years. I like what I do.
Yeah.
It makes my life a lot easier.
And sometimes you don't know it until you try it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer. Try something. If you like it, great. If you don't, that's still a good day.
Yeah.
To me, a great day, I have to do 3 things. One, I learned something. I've learned lots of things here at the school. I always do. Okay. I teach something. I am an instructor after all. Yeah. And I have some fun. Yeah. And we guarantee we'll have a little bit of fun.
Yeah. No, it's been it's a fun school. I really encourage anyone who has not been to this Highway school. It happens every year, same time, first week in June.
First week in June. Next year is June 1st through 3rd.
First through the 3rd, and it's in Ithaca for a while, right?
We've always had it in Ithaca. Always had it in Ithaca.
It's a good kind of general location for the state.
It started over at Cornell University, and it moved here because of space issues back in the 80s, and we've been here ever since at Ithaca College. They're a great host. And they actually, speaking of workforce development, have a program where they bring students up to learn how to run events.
Yeah, that's great.
So a lot of the people helping are students. In fact, some of the permanent staff used to be students.
Oh, so that's great.
That's a win-win.
The other area where we have a lot of commonality and been working very hard together with the legislature on is CHIPS funding and all the different transportation funding programs, Pave New York and potholes and all this kind of stuff. That's critically important, but talk a little bit about the history of CHIPS, and, we've had a big win this year, I think.
I heard you got $50 million more.
Yeah, $50 million more.
A lot of that has to do with the advocacy day that's done. What I do want to say, the history of state and even federal aid is an interesting one. State aid actually started for local roads with programs called the Donovan Program and the Irwin Program, that's spelled with an E, by the way. Mm-hmm. And those were state senators who had bills passed. And they put in requirements of how much money would be available if a town brought a road up to a certain standard. And they were pretty basic standards. And they would get, I think, $100 a mile in the original program, the Donovan program, to make a road at least 16 feet wide. If I remember the exact number, it might be 18. We can look that up. But the point is, that's eventually led to what was known as the Consolidated Highway Improvement Program. That was its first name back in the 70s, and now it's the Capital Highway Improvement Program. It's all got the name CHIPS. In fact, people make fun of with little bags of chips that I talk about. But the idea is state aid acts as a lever to make sure we meet certain standards and certain qualifications. We'd love to see some improvements in communication with CHIPS. And one of the most important components of that is working with you at the Association of Towns, NYCOM, the Conference of Mayors, Nysltap, the counties, and the state DOT. In fact, we have here the CHIPS engineers from the state who present and meet every year at the Highway School.
I like to say, and I had the opportunity to address the group this morning, and like to remind people that, and every time I talk to a legislator about CHIPS in particular, local roads are part of the state's infrastructure. You touched on that a little bit earlier, but local roads are public safety. Local roads are economic development, because you can't have either without good local roads. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of, I mean, you touched a little bit about how everyone starts and stops on it, which is also during my budget testimony, that came up. A legislator asked me about our center line miles, and said, well, okay, you may have more, but you don't have the volume, and I said, but you know what? Everybody's day starts and stops, and you have to use local roads to get to the state roads. I may not be on the thruway more than maybe once every couple of months, but I'm on a local road every day. Talk a little bit about the importance of local roads to the community that they're in.
Local roads and streets define a community in a lot of ways. If you think about communities that you go through, people live on Main Street. That's where they have the local parade. That's where the businesses are. But in a rural area, that's where the farms are. That's where people live. Mm-hmm. You can't have a community without having a local road system, whether that's a rural system, a suburban system, or an urban system. They're all interconnected. The state does manage what we call in engineering the arterials, the main roads. And yes, they take about half of the traffic if you look at total volume. But if you think about it, those roads collect traffic from local roads. And so in a perfect world, the state would do the arterials, the counties would do the collectors, and the towns and villages would do all the local roads. We don't live in a perfect world, but we live in one that's actually pretty dang close in that most town roads are considered local by designation at the federal level. Most county roads are collectors at the county level. But what that means is it's a network that is the beating heart of any place that you live. And if you think about your own blood vessels, what's the most important part? The capillaries, where we transfer things. So in the case of a local road, that's where the school is. That's where the businesses are. That's where people live. And so you can't have a network that's valuable without having the local roads to get people from point A to point B.
No, absolutely, no question about it. I mean, it is critically important. A lot of people think about, oh, roads, what's the big deal? But there's actually a lot that goes into planning of a proper safety of a road. And you just think about the work that these folks do. We have almost 700 plus superintendents here, highway superintendents. What they do in the winter just alone, making sure the roads are clear and so open and safe and passable, is an astonishing job. Frontline services right there. And the fact that they get that done and make sure communities continue to operate even in the worst of conditions is really a tribute to them.
One of the things we haven't touched on that's really important is shared services. People will do surveys of how much shared services are going on, and they'll usually report numbers in the 60 to 70% range. I don't know if you've come across those when you've seen papers. They're not accurate. The actual number is well above 90, 95%. Town highway departments work with each other. They work with the county highway departments to get paving done, help each other when there's an equipment breakdown. They share services all the time. It may not be done formally, it may be a handshake, but that shared services is absolutely critical to make things work.
And particularly because a lot of people don't realize that a highway department for a town, if you have a police department in that town, the highway department is probably a third of the budget. If you don't have a police department, it's probably half the budget. It's a big operation.
We've looked, and if you look at all infrastructure combined, that's roads, water, and sewer, the exact percentage I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's well over 50%. Infrastructure is the town budget. It's the driver. And in some cases, we know of towns where the highway department is 90% or more of the town budget. And that's mostly local dollars, which means property tax, maybe some sales tax. So we really need to be efficient with those things and use them really well to make them work.
Absolutely. Critically important. So, David, thank you for taking time to be here today. I know you're busy with the conference. Anything that we didn't talk about or anything you want to add? You told me your definition for a perfect day. So
I did tell you a definition of a perfect day. I want to make sure I covered that. We have a joke in the world of highway engineering. There's only three things that matter: drainage, drainage, and drainage. But actually, truth be told, there are really three things. When I do my top 10 list of important things, there's always three that really matter. Drainage is in that list. If you take care of the water, you're going to have a good road. with all this rain, we know how the effects of that. If you have good communications, you're going to have better roads. That communications could be between the highway superintendent and the board.
Yes.
We had a session on that this year. That could be communications between the public and the highway department. It also could be good signage, which is the way we communicate.
Yeah.
Communications is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
And then finally, of course, safety. Safety has to be the driver of everything that we do in some respects, because we want everybody to get home safely every single day.
Absolutely.
And that should be our goal for every single person. So top three, we can pick the order, but it's communications, drainage, and safety.
We should do a podcast on communications between supervisors and highway superintendents someday, because that would be an interesting one. That's an interesting dynamic.
We had a pair of superintendents and town supervisors to open the school yesterday. Yeah.
Excellent. David, thank you for being here. I appreciate it very much.
No problem. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you on all the things we're trying to get done.
Absolutely. We got more coming, more exciting things coming. This has been a great podcast. We're out on the road now. We're in Ithaca, as I mentioned earlier, and we've had the sounds of summer behind us. So hopefully the mowing of the grass didn't interfere too much, but I love hearing it, because with all this rain, I haven't been able to get on my mower. So it's telling me that the weather's getting a little bit warmer and nicer. So thank you. Again, make sure you can find us on Spotify, you can find us on Apple, and you can certainly find us on YouTube. Make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe on all of those platforms. And next week we'll be coming back to you again with another exciting podcast. Thank you.